Get the audio set up. Allow me to get my camera out for just 1 second, getting this ready. New screen recording. Set the screen. Yes, it's as large as I want the screen to be. Start recording. Alright, I believe we're here. Yeah, this is the asshole who's making all these videos. And yes, I usually do wear these things. So, if you don't know who I am Johnny. I'm the guy who runs the Galliard Group YouTube channel. I'm getting to full screen for this. And yeah, this looks good. Kyle is absent for this episode, so I'm winging it by myself for this one. And what better than what's a better way to wing it than a tier list video? Yep, we're doing this today. A lot of this is going to be just me going back and forth. If I have something interesting to say, I'll just bring this out. Yeah, there's on my channels. You'll get to know what any of these are. So, checking this out, I really do love and enjoy the World of Darkness. Now, let's get a little bit of ambience in here. I don't know how loud this is going to be, so let's just do this. Alright. Because of how I'm recording this, I've got kind of sort of have to have like an external microphone. Let me check how well it's doing in terms of audio. I think that's like just like a little bit off, but forget. This is a cheap little setup. I'm a cheap little guy. So, actually, let me just turn that down just a hair, just a smidge. I think you can still pick that up. Let me check one more time. Yeah, I can still pick that up. So, I really do love and enjoy the World of Darkness series. And I know that might sound a little crazy, given I'm not that favorable of Werewolf 5th edition. I don't think that many people are, in all honesty. I think the only people that really support that game are people who just want to support it just to stick it to the non-existent Nazis that play this game. It's not real, it's never been real. And I feel like it's just this imaginary boogeyman at the end of the day. But I'm not here to talk about politics today, I'm just here to talk about this. Is there an objectively best World of Darkness game? We are going to discuss that, and I think there is, if you can't tell what I'm supposed to mean by best World of Darkness. So, I will go through these games one by one. I am going to include Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Ascension, Wraith the Oblivion, Changeling the Dreaming, Hunter the Reckoning, Demon the Fallen, Mummy the Resurrection, Kindred of the East, Orpheus, and I thought about it, and let's go ahead and put Midnight Circus on here too. I won't be touching any Chronicles of Darkness games, and we aren't talking about 20th Anniversary Edition, and we're definitely not talking about 5th Edition. This is just old, classic World of Darkness from editions 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So, I think that's enough for an introduction. Let's start doing this. So, let's begin with the game that technically started all. If you want to get semantic, it was Ars Magica that started the whole series, but the one that everybody knows the most about. Vampire the Masquerade. This is how I got introduced into World of Darkness, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Let's go into detail about that. Play a little bit more somber music, because this is a pretty somber game. So, the thing with Vampire the Masquerade, I posted it in our highlights channel. I think Ham, one of our cast members, put it perfectly when he was talking about Vampire the Masquerade. You don't really get to decide who you start out as in the World of Darkness in terms of Vampire. You get to decide who you become, but your bad day starts your character. You used to be a normal guy. You were either a man on the street, you were a corporate lackey, you were a mercenary, or really anybody. And a vampire just happened to find you, and either forcibly or willingly turned you. And you learn that, yes, you do have a lot of crazy powers. You can get shot in the chest and be fine. But you can't see the sun ever again. and you're not human. And final death, that's called final death for a reason. When you die as a vampire, that's it. No heaven, no hell, nothing. Unless you're a Giovanni, but most of us aren't. The Giovanni aren't exactly siring that many people anymore. And if you are looking for the best possible vampire experience, I can't recommend enough Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's incredible how that game got World of Darkness right. And we played World of Darkness, the Galliard group, and Vampire was our introductory. It was me introducing Kyle, Ryan, and Sean to World of Darkness as a whole. Ham and Meepian had already played these games. And this is the game that got them into World of Darkness. There is a small criticism I can levy against the game. Even though you ultimately decide who you are in Vampire, things do get a little restrictive because you being a vampire tends to box you into certain situations. Granted, the way I'm trying to say it is that just not being able to step out in daylight does kind of box you in. Where if I need to get something done, I only have a 12-hour period that changes with the season. The winter solstice, best night I can get everything done. That's the longest night in the world. Summer solstice, pretty limited. And this is a game where you constantly feel vulnerable. Sure, you heal every time you drain blood, but your disciplines are very quick to fail you because you start looking at all the crazy abilities that everyone else has, the werewolves, the mages, and you quickly realize that you are outclassed. There's a reason this game is defined as a personal horror, and you never feel safe as a vampire. You may lie to yourself, you may pretend that you're Hardstat the eldest or the youngest, you may tell yourself that you're Theo Bell, you might even tell yourself that, well, insert name of Tremere here, but you will never be in a secure position as a vampire. Final death is always around the corner. And you can have some pretty personal horror stories. I mean, you have the beast, and it's constantly trying to turn you into a super predator that's going to kill everyone. And it's pretty hard to ignore. You have to make sure that you're only ever going after people who deserve their blood drink, people who deserve to die. And you make mistakes a lot. This is a game where you might think you're a good person, but you, by nature of being a vampire, there's a reason why everyone else in World of Darkness thinks you're better off dead. I mean, you have to forcibly drain blood from people. Even if you're an Osiris, that's coercion at the end of the day. And the influences in Vampire the Masquerade, too. From the political implications of, say, Karl Marx's definition of a vampire with the Ventru, or the vampirism mental illness aspects with the Malkavian, or all the different references with cinema with Nosferatu, or we can go with even older political commentary with the La Sombra. And really, you can make your character anything in Vampire the Masquerade, as long as they stay a vampire. But do you want to be a vampire that hunts other vampires? Yes, you can. Do you want to be a vampire who tries building an underground criminal empire? Yes, you can. Can you be a vampire who just wants to be left alone? Well, half our party in Galliard group was that kind of vampire. They just wanted to go back to what could have been their lives. And even though the sun is off limits, unless you're a La Sombra who's extremely powerful, this game, it does have a lot of opportunities to tell very dark, very personal stories. And it's the best known game for a reason. So we're putting Vampire the Masquerade an A. And it deserves to be an A. It's a great game. Really do like it. Now, with us being the Galliard group, You would think that I would automatically put Werewolf in the best category. I'm not, and I'm going to explain why at length. As much as I absolutely love Werewolf the Apocalypse, there is a lot of issues with this game. Namely just initially, as we talked about in our first impressions video with Werewolf the 5th edition, tried to address some of these, and did so in a very heavy-handed, uncompromising, confrontational way that rubbed everyone in the Galliard group the wrong way. But there are issues with the game as a whole, and this is where we start. All the games of World of Darkness have a recurring motif of trying to overthrow the mistakes of those who came before you. The vampires, you're constantly fighting against the older generation who is trying to step on your neck. And you can do that in Werewolf, but you don't make as much progress as you think you would. Because of the litany, the way it's set up with the whole the leader can't be challenged in times of war, and you're at war all the time, and you must grant power to those of a higher station. Don't burden me with your sickness. It is right to say that Werewolf Society as a whole is extremely authoritarian. But this is a game that's not trying to be the gothic punk nightmare that is Vampire the Masquerade. It's very similar in nature to Warhammer. I think we mentioned that before in the first impressions video too, where there's a lot of similarities between this game and Warhammer 40k. And just how absolutely unforgiving this game can be in terms of its brutality. And you look at the art for this game too, and you have books like Freak Legion and the Valkenburg Foundation, and it's very abrasive artwork. It can be a little bit hard to look at, especially Freak Legion. The art in this entire series, the Old World Darkness, can be a little scuffed at times, but this is one of those few times where I'm thankful a better artist wasn't drawing for Werewolf, because I think I wouldn't be able to get through Freak Legion otherwise. You can tell some very dark stories with Werewolf. Vampire the Masquerade is a political horror. Werewolf is a war story. You are constantly at war. Don't expect anyone to survive throughout this game, not even you. Sure, you are the most, on a purely mechanical level, overpowered out of all werewolves, but of all creatures, I'm sorry. Debatable with mages. A mage might be a little stronger than a werewolf, but sure, you have the ret meter, but rage is such a powerful mechanic in World of Darkness. I think if the mage messes up or just rolls low initiative, the werewolf will always win. And sure, you have rage. You have incredible regeneration, even better than the vampires. You get your arms ripped off, you just keep fighting. But you're ultimately screwed. Because of the nature of the Werewolf Nation, because of all the odds you're up against, the minute you enter Geru Society and learn about the Worm, the Weaver, the Wild, the current state of Gaia, you change. You know that the world is not the way you thought it was before your first change, and it never will be. And the nature of rage makes it borderline impossible for you to function in a normal society. Especially when you get to Philodox, Galliard, and absolutely so with the Arun. The Theurge and Ragabash, maybe. And in terms of fighting against the mistakes of your ancestors, it kind of feels like you're screwed when you play Werewolf. Because werewolves that didn't know what they were doing, like Wormbaiter, for example, they've screwed the world so much that it doesn't feel like the Gerus can pull a victory anymore. That the world is going to end. I mean, the apocalypse is in the name of the game, but it feels like the game is less about preventing the apocalypse and dealing with the apocalypse. And some tribes aren't equal to other tribes. I don't mean that racially. Do not take that off context. You have groups like, for example, the Children of Gaia, who are authoritarians who pretend to be these sweet little babies who want to get their way all day, every day. And you have the Black Furies, who put a lot of stock into feminism and social issues, and the Black Furies have a lot of good stuff to say. The Black Furies are one of my favorite tribes for a reason. Then you have contrasting groups like the Bonars or the Glasswalkers, who see the end of the world on the horizon, and they're ready for it. And what are the Children of Gaia going to do when Apocalypse rears its head? Majority of them are going to die. The only group that's prepared for the apocalypse is the imminent strike, and they've never seen any combat experience. Same with groups that have focused way too much on politics of the time, like the Black Furies and the Silver Fangs, or hell, we'll even put the Fianna in there too. What are you going to have when the end of the world happens? When you reach an endgame scenario, when the apocalypse does happen, it feels like a lot of these guys are going to die, and there's no way around it. And mechanically, there is a small issue when it comes to gifts and fetishes. The rites, there is no issue with the rites. The rites are pretty fun. Have a great time enacting your rites, but you need to contact a spirit whenever you speak. Whenever you want to level up and get a new gift or a new totem, and you need a theurge for that. And with this being a combat-heavy game, somebody also needs to play the Alrune, maybe a Galliard. And this is a game that, even though there's tons of customizable options in World of Darkness, it feels like you're being boxed in with this game. And this is the only game where it feels like you are limited in what you can and can't play. I know I kind of gave Justin and Chile some ammo saying that, but no, the political identity of werewolves helps this game. And the class structure, putting the screws to your players, the meta game of Werewolf, it's great. I do like games that have a good meta. I do like games where there are constantly stakes, like Pathfinder 2nd Edition. But for a game with as many customability options as the World of Darkness, there is that very defined meta with Werewolf, and it does lead to a lot of players picking complacent options. We love to get Ephemeris on this channel, but we said it in our first impressions video, 3 of us picked the Get Ephemeris when we were making the game, and we had to compromise. One of us backed out, picked a Black Fury instead. One of us kind of sort of compromised by making a Get Ephemeris that acted more like a Shadow Lord, and then the other Get Ephemeris played it straight. And you can have multiple Ventrue or Nosferatu in your vampire game. You can't exactly do that with Werewolf the Apocalypse and expect to survive if you're playing the game straight as it is. This is a war story, like I said. So, we love the game. We love the war. We've dedicated a podcast to it. And once we talk about Werewolf, we are going to drift to other World of Darkness games. And we love it. It's a beautiful game. It's a beautifully flawed game. Which is why, as much as I love Werewolf the Apocalypse, I can't place it higher than B. You are a great game, but you've got some issues. Not related to lore. The lore is fantastic, but mechanically, and if you think too hard about it, some stuff rears its head. Now, with that song change, Mage. Let's talk about Mage. Mage is incredible. This is the deepest World of Darkness has gone, with talking about cultures, talking about lore. We get to talk about the idea of enlightenment. And it is a beautiful game where you can tell so many beautiful stories, and no one idea is treated as right. There is one idea that is objectively wrong, but that is the Nefandi. Don't be the Nefandi. The Nefandi have never been right about anything. No sympathy for Nefandi here. This is an anti-Nefandi channel. You have the Akashics, where all of that is based in say, Hinduism and Buddhism, and learning how to leave your mortal body through constantly studying what it means to be without desire. You have the Euthanatos, who are the Adjustment Bureau, who, yeah, they have a lot of similar things to the Akashic Brotherhood. They're also based in the East. But they have very different views on death, and if you ask them what they thought of death, they would just shrug their shoulders and talk about it like it was normal. You have the Celestial Chorus, which is all about your connection to God and answering to a higher power, equaling Ascension. And then you have the Hermetics. I really don't like Gnosticism. I will go into detail about that when we eventually talk about the Order of Hermes. But in World of Darkness, with the existence of the Worm, they're kind of in the right here, because we, the mages, the Order of Hermes, are trying to overcome the Worm that has trapped us in a horrible world, and we're trying to escape it. And that makes for a very, very good narrative. It is so human, looking through Mage the Ascension. But why don't the mages have humanity at their backs? The technocracy got there first. And that leads to a very interesting conundrum. There's this... I feel like it's a misunderstanding to say that religion and science are constantly at odds. Education as we know it started in the church. The universities started in the church. So, no, there never really was a divide to begin with. Just a divide was placed before religion and spiritualism and science. And you can see that in the technocracy. They used to be Hermetics until the tomes of Atlantis were discovered. I don't remember the original name of the book, I'm sorry. And it's very interesting, because who's right here? The technocracy were originally depicted as just the bad guys and only the bad guys, but then the game got nuanced. They gave the technocracy talking points. You saw accomplishments with the technocracy, and they seemed like guys that genuinely cared about humanity. And they do, but I don't agree with the technocracy. The kind of ascension they have in mind, it's the worst form of tyranny I can think of, besides what we'll talk about in Demon Fallen. And the traditions aren't that better, actually, because no one tradition can really agree with the other. The only reason they work together is because they're all losing to the technocracy. And you can tell when the technocratic union falls, these guys will be at each other's throats. After all, they're at odds with the werewolves, even though they're fighting for the exact damn same thing. And it's very interesting to play this. And there is a small hang-up with Mage. If you're playing a Chronicle with the Sons of Ether or the Virtual Adepts, you don't need to worry too much about religion talk. But if you're playing a game with the Verbena, the Dream Speakers, the Akashics, especially the Thanatos, Order of Hermes, and Celestial Chorus, you probably should know a thing or two about religion, philosophy, and mysticism before you go into running Mage the Ascension. This is the only game I have to say you need to look at real-world writing for homework for this game. I can't say that with Werewolf or Vampire. You just need to read those books. But Mage, I feel like if you're going to run Mage and you're going to run it right, you need to know a lot about multiple topics. But that said, I can't fault Mage on anything. I really like the Arret system. And being able to make your own foci and the room to build your own spells in this game. This game is fantastic. I'm putting it above Vampire. And also the way the Mage the Ascension metaplot wraps up. It is a beautiful story. It is a beautiful story. I really do love the way that Mage ties its metaplot together. Now let's go into the absolute bleakest game in the series. Alright, you ready to get uncomfortable? We're talking about Wraith. And Wraith is a bleak game. This is the only system I've ever seen in my life where the players are heroes and antagonists to each other at the same time. Wraith, of course, you're dead. I mean, big guess as to what this game is going to be about. But there's a way you can die a second time. And the multiple fates waiting for you in the Shadowlands, some of these are absolutely horrific. Either becoming part of the soul trade in Stygia, or being a pawn of the Yama Kings. you can't win as a Wraith. You just need to survive. And this is World of Darkness at its darkest. And I think that's the reason why I have never seen a Wraith the Oblivion game in the wild. This is a game I really do like, and I really do like reading, but I don't think I can play this game with strangers. I need to know somebody pretty well personally in order to introduce Wraith to them. We are debating in Galliard group playing Wraith after playing Werewolf, but I'm still not sure how to go about that. And, well, you know, if you've watched our live play, we don't have a filter. And I think that might be a game that might be too dark to live play. That said, what is there is absolutely fantastic. The recontextualizing of the Cain and Abel story, the existence of Karen, and all the different lords, just the smiling lord as an antagonist is fantastic. And this is probably the most customizable out of all these games because you really do decide what you look like. You don't like the way you look when you died, you can just morph your body. And getting items in this game, it's pretty easy. I really undersell that. And learning new abilities, it's very interesting. There are so many abilities you can pick up in Wraith, and all of them feel so unique. I remember there's a flesh crafting, you're not exactly flesh ability in this game that makes vicissitude look like you're drawing with crayons. You are a living canvas, and you can turn yourself into whatever with that power. The name of it is escaping me, I'm sorry. I'll put it in the description once I remember what it's called. And there's a reason why I'm playing Silent Hill music for this. There is a game that feels very similar to Wraith the Oblivion, and that is Silent Hill. And this is like a chicken the egg thing, because I'm pretty sure the idea for Wraith existed before this game. But thinking about the incredible personal stories, more so than Vampire, that you can tell with Wraith, it really does feel like you're playing Silent Hill 2 the tabletop. That's not to say this game is derivative. No, you can make up some crazy stuff with Wraith. And after all, this is the easiest game to understand. You remember that Patrick Swayze movie, Ghost? That's just what it was called, Ghost. That might as well be Wraith the Oblivion, the movie. It is very easy to understand how to play Wraith. So, this game is incredible. I really, really like it. But I can't put it above Mage, because even though there's nothing wrong with Wraith, the subject matter and the mechanics make it very difficult to recommend to somebody in good faith. I need to know you if I am going to tell you about Wraith the Oblivion. But that said, let's talk about the sequel. We're not doing Changeling next, we're going into Orpheus. Let's do it. So, Orpheus is the sequel game, so to speak, with Wraith, and it is incredible. I have never gotten to play Orpheus. This is the one game in the World of Darkness I haven't touched yet, but it completes Wraith the Oblivion. You don't need to know somebody personally to play Orpheus with them. Even though this is I think this is the game with the least amount of books, it is so human in its storytelling. I'm going to say more so than Hunter the Reckoning, because there's an afterlife, and the darkness and Wraith, it's inescapable. There is an escape in Orpheus. there is a hope. There is a reason to press on in the World of Darkness with Orpheus. And the whole existence of the Orpheus group is a brilliant decision amongst White Wolf. That was such a great idea to create the Orpheus group for this game. Knowing that there are a group of humans that are independent of the Weaver and the Worm or the Wild that contact ghosts and then make the existence of an afterlife known to humanity, that's a... If I were to see it in the news today, if I were to see, yes, we do have confirmation that there are ghosts, I wouldn't be scared at all. I'd be elated to seeing that, knowing that there is a de facto proof of life after death. And the stories you can tell with Orpheus, everything I just said about Wraith, it still stands true with Orpheus. They cleaned up and streamlined a lot of features, and this game is easier to jump into than Wraith. Wraith, you might need to know a teeny bit of the map plot. You don't need to know too terribly much about Wraith to play it. I don't think you need to know that much about Orpheus besides the premise of it before you can just hop right in and start having fun. And this is I'm going to say the easiest game to storytell. So, bombs away with Orpheus. I'm putting you above Mage. This is a great game. Yeah, that's the game I've rated the highest so far, and that's the one I've said the least about. Now, let's do Changeling. And I think this might be a little anticlimactic for the video with what I'm about to say with Changeling to Dreaming. But, you know, fuck it, right? This is my video. I get to say what I want. When I talk about Changeling the Dreaming, this is a game that requires a little bit of explanation. Changeling the Dreaming has always been derided as just a little too saccharine of a game for World of Darkness, and I can't disagree with you more. People that say that just haven't really played Changeling the Dreaming, or they had a storyteller who didn't really understand the objective of Changeling the Dreaming. I sound incredibly pretentious saying that, I'm sorry, but there is a beautiful story you can tell with Changeling the Dreaming. And to start off the story, I'm going to tell you straight up, no, that's not right. Sorry about that. That's not the song I wanted to play. Let's go with, yeah, that's just a little bit better. I like the bells in this one. This is the best World of Darkness game. And I'm going to explain why. With majority of these games, you have a set tone. You have the war story of Werewolf. You have the personal horror of Vampire. You have the horror story, deeply horrific story of Wraith and Orpheus. And the path of enlightenment of Mage. You can go anywhere with Changeling the Dreaming. I mean that. Do you want to play Fairly Odd Parents the game? Well, you can. You can have a game that's incredibly comedic for the World of Darkness. There's going to be some gallows humor. There's going to be some dark humor. I guess like a Butch Hartman show if it was written by the same people that make Hell of a Boss. That probably sounds terrible, but it sounds better in my head. Or you can make Madoka Magica the tabletop game. You can go for the deconstruction of the magical girls. Because, yes, you are a fairy. You are a being made of the hopes and dreams of children and young adults and old men that have never lost their inner child. But you are screwed. The nature of the Shattering has ruined any chance of any Fae gaining any foothold in the World of Darkness. You'll never have to worry about the Unseelie Court or the Shadow Court, because they will never gain a foothold that they can keep in the World of Darkness. And it's that denial of your destiny that makes this game fantastic. Just looking at the world around you, knowing your circumstance, knowing that there is no hope that changelings will rise up, and you say no. I'm going to do what I know is right. I'm going to do what I know I need to do. And that is such a beautiful message. Say yes to life. That is the message that I get from Changing the Dreaming. And it is such a beautiful game. And if you know anybody who's going through a hard time, this is a wonderful game to introduce them to, even if it's just the lore books. Just knowing that there is a way you can find happiness in a world of darkness. That is what makes Changing the Dreaming such a beautiful game to me. I'm getting a little emotional talking about this. And you don't have to go with that. You can be the unseelie. After all, how do fairies get their power? By people believing in fairies. You fighting banality. So, the unseelie, it's pretty easy. Just scare the hell out of anyone who comes across you. I mean, a werewolf is going to induce delirium when they see a werewolf. If a human sees a werewolf in Kronos form, they'll forget about it. No, you're going to remember your encounter with an unseelie fae. And there's an even darker narrative we can tell with the Shadow Court. After all, if there's nothing I can do as a fae, if I'm going to eventually disappear, whether the worm or the weaver takes over the world, what does it matter? Why should I bother being a good person? Why should I bother leaving an impact at all? Nobody's going to look at me. Nobody believes in me anymore. I'm just a fairy and I'm going to die and nobody's going to know my name and my soul's just going to pass on to someone else. I won't even be myself upon death. So why shouldn't I join the Shadow Court? Why shouldn't I spit in the face of the world and tell everybody if I'm going down, I'm taking every last one of you with me? The darkness that is the Shadow Court. This is a villain that is more horrifying to me than the Black Spiral Dancers, than Pentex, than the seventh generation. As disgusting as those three are, the Sabbat, the Annie group, the Shadow Lord honestly freaks me out. And it's their nature of being fae, of being partially creatures that are born from the hopes and dreams of humanity. That these are creatures that are born from humanity's desire for destruction, humanity's desire to die. And I would like to eventually do a video where I talk about Persona 3 and a little bit more about that idea, but this Shadow Court, just pure and simple nihilism, just the horror of giving up and what that looks like in the hands of somebody who could deal lethal damage. That is what drives home the horror of Changing the Dreaming to me. You could have been Seelie, you could have done something beautiful for the world, but instead, you are doing everything you can to not just hurt everyone around you, but also yourself. And that is the creepiest, darkest villain I can think of for this game. But this game isn't about that, is it? This is a game where majority of people are going to play as a Seelie, and once again, like I said, even though you're screwed, you can still leave an impact on the world. Even though you'll die and become someone else upon your reincarnation as a fae, the impact you left on people will stay with them forever. Even as their lives become banal, they'll still remember the time that Redcap defended them from a schoolyard bully, the time that a Sluagh picked mushrooms and bugs with them, the time that a Hookah appeared and had a tea party with them, the same time they had a Bogan build a little treehouse for them, the same time they had a Knocker make the best science project in the world for them, the same time a Troll taught them how to play sports, the same time an Issue told them the best story they ever heard in their life, and the She probably did something too. I think I might be forgetting a Kith when I say this actually, but the decision to be a good person and changing to dreaming. This is why I love Changing the Dreaming more than I love Werewolf or any other game. And once we finish talking about Werewolf, I will immediately jump into talking about Changeling, because I really do want more people to understand and talk about Changing the Dreaming. Now, with that out of the way, With me spilling my guts out of the way, let's talk about let's talk about good old Hunter the Reckoning. So, Hunter the Reckoning. This is a very pro-human game. This is a canonical ending to World of Darkness. I say canonical. One of the many endings to World of Darkness. This was released with the Times of Judgment. And it's incredible to me. It's humanity taking their lives back into their own hands. That is a very good story to talk about. Hunter the Reckoning, you and the rest of humanity, you have realized that vampires have been controlling your companies and your government. You realize that the werewolves are colluding to kill you all. You are realizing that the mages, that the technocracy don't care about you. And you have decided that you are going to take your life into your own hands. That humanity will no longer be led by beings that aren't human anymore. They will call their own shots for the rest of their lives. And it's incredible. And it is why I hate Hunter the Reckoning 5th edition. Because that is a game that it was very clear to me that Renegade Studios, Paradox Interactive just did not understand what Hunter the Reckoning was supposed to be. It's not just, oh, we're the government and we have the government-sponsored hunting party. We have one in America. Let's make one for Brazil. Let's make one for China. Let's make one for other countries. Or, oh, we have a Catholic church group. Let's also make a Protestant church group. Aren't we clever? No, it's not that. It's not that. The Church of St. Leopold, the IAA, and the Arcanum, the 3 hunter guilds that were present when Hunter the Reckoning started. There were the Children of Osiris and the Youngbloods, but they were ghouls. I see why they were eventually replaced. But the 3 end goals behind all of them. The IAA creating a nation that's truly by the people, of the people, for the people. The Church of St. Leopold cleansing the world of a demonic influence that has riddled their lives for years. And the Arcanum saying that nobody should be allowed to have the power of any sort of supernatural or spiritual essence. And they take their lives into their own hands and erase that power from ever falling into anyone else's hands. And really, this game is awesome. I mean it when I say Hunter the Reckoning. You go from a man on the street to the world's savior. And that sounds like power fantasy. It's not. You die very quickly when you play Hunter the Reckoning. I've heard so many people tried Hunter and then died 2 sessions in, and then the game just ends. And you have to really think about Hunter the Reckoning. That is a hard game. Hunter the Reckoning is hard to play. And in a game where you've been playing as werewolves, vampires, mages, even the Wraith and the Changeling are stronger than just a plain old human, you start bleeding out at 3 activated damage. It is very difficult to play Hunter the Reckoning. And the mechanics, the zeal and other convictions have always been just a little confusing to me. And even though I'm not really a fan of Chronicles of Darkness, I do think Hunter the Vigil was onto something by just having you be a human and only human with no powers. That made it more impressive for me as a story, but that said, the sheer level of difficulty with Hunter the Reckoning and the juxtaposition it has to the rest of World of Darkness. As much as I love this game, I do say it's objectively worse than Vampire. It's better than Werewolf. It's certainly better than Werewolf. And I'm not going to call this game B tier. I'm going to put it up in A. It's right behind Vampire. And this is objectively the best way World of Darkness can end as a story, as a meta plot. But, you know, you're human at the end of the day. Getting to that ending is going to be the most difficult part of that game. Now, let's talk about the boogeyman of the games, the game that nobody really wants to talk about, that is going to be Demon the Fallen. Demon the Fallen is very sloppy, I have to admit that. It is a game that was released at the ass end of White Wolf's existence. And it feels like they were rushing this product out, that it needed to get out the door before White Wolf went under as a company. Granted, that doesn't doom a project. After all, you had Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Troika Games was going bankrupt as they were making that game, and it was fantastic. And you can see the fingerprints of a great game in Demon the Fallen. You can see that this game was going to be incredible, but because of its rushed development cycle, it clashes a lot with already existing lore. After all, it kinda, sorta does undeniably overwrite a lot of lore that was existed for years, since the early 90s in Werewolf, Vampire, and Mage. And yeah, as a guy who was raised Christian, who's currently Catholic, I do like this game. I like its subject matter. I do like religious horror, and having a little cult simulator, which is what Demon the Fallen is. You have a little cult. You are a pagan deity, so to speak, demonized, and the powers in this game, you feel incredible. Lore of Fire, by the time you level that up to level 2, that's almost every major threat in this game dealt with, but it's very simplistic, and it's not the game, it's not the fault of the game itself. Comparing this to Mage the Ascension, it's weird that a mage can do more than a demon can, in terms of abilities. If White Wolf were around for a longer amount of time, this game could have been absolutely incredible. And the ending. Lucifer is a pretty scary villain for Demon the Fallen. I mean, granted, he is the devil with a capital D in this game, but he's a guy who feels very similar to the Shin Megami Tensei interpretation of Lucifer, where it's a guy who loves humanity and is more like a Prometheus figure. Kind of like the sympathetic interpretation of John Milton. But that's the thing. You're not supposed to sympathize with Lucifer. What he wants is to turn you into a doll in a dollhouse, where everything is decided for you. I mean, I'm going to sound strange saying this. The Barbie movie. If you want to be a Barbie in Barbie Land, but a giant hand comes down and manipulates everything you do, and you look at everyone around you and everyone has a hand attached to them, and you don't decide what you look like, what you sound like, what you think, anything about you, that's a worse dictatorship than anything the Technocracy or the Weaver could do. And the sheer horror of what Demon the Fallen could be. Because even though you're a demon, even though you're technically a god, because the body exists, and because of what you hypothetically can do with high-level daimonian and vampire, there's still a being out there stronger than you besides God. So, yeah, you might think you're invincible, but you never do feel too safe in any of these games. So, Demon the Fallen, you will always be the game that tried and could have been incredible, but it just never happened, and it's not fair. It's not fair that you are the way that you are. But, you know, we tried. White Wolf tried. B tier. Now let's go to the game that, in all honesty, I know the least about, and I probably shouldn't say anything about. Let's talk about Mummy. So, me and Kyle, we spent 2 episodes talking about the story of Set and Shu Hiru. We did not talk about the actual Hiru that much, Horus. And reading about the Shimsu Hiru, just the little mention that you get in the live-action roleplay guide for Werewolf, hearing about that, and looking a little bit into Horus and seeing that there is a otherworldly force that is fighting for humanity and humanity first, that wants to overthrow all the dark powers. Mummy sounds awesome. It's not canon. You don't need to know about Mummy at all to run any World of Darkness game. And more than likely, Mummy will never be brought up in any of the Chronicles. But if you wish to run it, you are playing as the dead risen. Granted, that's why Mummy. Yeah, the original idea, I know. But you are a supernatural. It seems like your purpose is to stop other supernaturals. That you are a defender of humanity, or maybe you're here for another reason. Maybe there's unfinished business you had in life that death itself couldn't stop you. Or really, you could be anything with Mummy. Granted, you are going to have to find a way to hide that you are a corpse, but we have abilities for that. We live in a world of darkness. You don't just see corpses walk on the street. They are still walking next to you, you just don't know it. Mummy, I wish I knew a little bit more about this. I do feel like I'm sticking my foot in my mouth about this. So, I am placing this in B ahead of Demon of Fallen, right after Werewolf the Apocalypse. I don't know enough about that game in order to place it higher or lower. I like what I've seen so far, that's why I'm putting it there. Now, we get into the kind of sort of unfortunate part of this video. I mentioned before that Kindred of the East is one of the worst books in World of Darkness, and I am not going to accuse this game of racism. That's not why I think Kindred of the East is rough. The reason why I think it's rough is that I went into it expecting it to be a big, deep dive into China, Japan, Southeast Asia, Korea, and India, and the World of Darkness. And what I got instead was a John Woo movie. And I like John Woo movies, I like Kung Fu movies, I like a lot of anime, I like a lot of Asian action. But I was expecting a deeper dive than what I got with Kindred of the East. And with the system that they made for it, it is a very weird combination of vampire, werewolf, mage, and wraith, and vampire, werewolf, mage, and wraith. All existing in one game with multiple mentions of Changeling. So if you want a game that combined almost all the splats, you have it. And it honestly does feel as clustered and cluttered as it sounds. I really want to say Kindred of the East is a good example of mixing splats, but I don't think I can, guys. Kindred of the East is cool for what it is. If you want to make a game about the Triads, the Tongs, and the Yakuza all fighting each other, and if you want to go into any sort of detail about, say, a figurehead of an ancient Chinese dynasty rising back and trying to take the country into his own hands, those kind of stories, those are cool. And the nature of Kuei Jin being a combination of both a wraith and a human, that's cool that you're technically two people in one body. But it's very complicated to understand because who exactly are you? Are you a synthesis? Are you the ghost? Or are you the human? What exactly is the human after death? The process of creating a Kuei Jin, from what I understand, it's 20 years or something to make a Kuei Jin. And along with that, you have the Yama Kings, and the Yama Kings are a little ambiguous. Granted, this was a game that was written very late in White Wolf's existence. And this game was sharing development time with so many other games that were being pushed out the door. And it feels like this game was in a strangle contest with the Libon book, where both books wanted to be recognized, but resources felt a little split between the two. That Ebony Kingdom is a good book. I really like the way it recontextualizes the vampire clans and renames them and the God War games you can create with the Libon, but it feels like I have to blame somebody here. The Libon still fell flat, and I blame the Kuei Jin for that. The Kuei Jin fell flat, and I blame the Libon for that. And Kindred of the East, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines really built up the Kuei Jin, and I was immensely disappointed to read the mechanics of Kindred of the East, and I found out that a Bruja with 4 points in celerity will just steamroll every fight they get into with the Kuei Jin. They're not Ming Xiao. Ming Xiao herself isn't Ming Xiao. You can steamroll the Kuei Jin. The Ravnos should have won in the Wicked Nightmares. There shouldn't be any more Kuei Jin. It should be all controlled by the Ravnos, in my not so humble opinion. And Kindred of the East, it's a very ambitious game. I like what it was trying to do, but we do need an objectively worse game. It's not a bad game. I'm not going to say that. What it does with creating the action movie vibe, it's very cool. It feels like you can have a great time playing Kindred of the East. But somebody needs to come into last place, and I take no pleasure in doing this, really, but somebody is going to wind up at C tier. Sorry, Kindred of the East, you're cool, but you're just not cool enough. And this is going to be a little quick entry. Let's talk about... let's go ahead and do it. Midnight Circus. So this is a game that not that many people know about, really. I mean, I didn't know about it until two weeks ago. This was the honest attempt of combining all the splats in a very strange way. World of Darkness, White Wolf, they really liked the movie Freaks. I can tell because they named an entire subcategory of Nosferatu after that movie's villain. And the Midnight Circus, it feels like Freaks in a way, where you have a very weird subfaction in World of Darkness, where vampires, werewolves, mages, wraiths, and changelings all meet in one place and manage to not kill each other. And it's a little hard to believe, but for the idea of what it is, it's pretty fun, actually. You don't need to make it a game that combines everyone. You can have a group of players that's entirely vampire, that's entirely werewolf. You don't need everyone to play one of everything. And you can go multiple places with this. The book actually does a pretty good job signposting different adventures that you could do. And it feels like this is the series, the one and only adventure module, so to speak. There was Valkenburg Foundation and Giovanni Chronicles, but both of those felt like they had very defined, predetermined beginnings and ends. But this really can go anywhere. Midnight Circus, it's a very goofy idea for the World of Darkness. The lack of a really serious tone kind of dumbs it down for me, since a lot of these games we've been looking at, I mean, from Changeling to Demon to Werewolf, we have some pretty serious games here. And, well, does World of Darkness need to be serious all the time? No. I mean, you can have a lot of fun in the darkness of World of Darkness, but it can be a little hard to stress how Midnight Circus is supposed to function, especially if an outside group like the Camarilla or the Guerra Nation were to get their hands on it. But for what it is, I do like the idea. I will be placing it, I'll put it ahead of Mummy in B tier. And there you have it. This is my opinion at the end of the day. No, I'm not sponsored by Mint Mobile or Adobe. I probably should have X'd these out before I started, but fuck it. This isn't bothering anything. So, that's my opinion. And once again, I really do love World of Darkness as a whole. This is and always will be my favorite tabletop game. I did say that about Dungeons & Dragons, but that was before I started reading everything there was to read about Dungeons & Dragons. And honestly, I think I'm over D&D as a whole. I'm still gonna play second edition. I'll check out third edition if I want to, but World of Darkness is going to be that game that I am never going to get sick of. That I will never stop playing World of Darkness games. And this is why I've made this channel. It was upsetting to me that the lack of content, because World of Darkness has always been the game that has always tried and always failed to get a following going. And the best way we can get a following going is if we keep talking about it. So just making a little video where I talk about something I love. I mean, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep talking about these games, and eventually we'll go somewhere. Of course, I do have an announcement video I'm going to make sometime this week, but we'll keep you guessing on that one. I think this video has gone on for long enough. I will stop the recording now. See, this is how you stop it for a quick time. And now let me just turn the CraigBot off. Alright, goodbye everybody, and we'll see you next video. I'm leaving this in, I'm leaving in me figuring out how to get this to stop. Let's get him to... Here we go, I found the button.